Committee of the Whole meeting. And we will do an update. We have to do roll call, don't we? Okay, roll call.
Can you just wait 1 second? I need to turn.
I thought you said I was ready.
I thought it was.
I'm ready. Finally.
As long as everything was shut off. Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We will start the Crow Wing County Committee. Oh, I don't have to do that over again?
No,
Okay.
we're recording all along. Sorry. But I'm ready to call roll if you're ready.
Oh, please, would you call
Okay.
roll?
Commissioner Coring,
I'm here.
Commissioner Lubke,
Here.
Commissioner Barrows,
I'm here.
Commissioner Franzine. Here. Commissioner Hoag. Here. All members are present.
Thank you. Now we'll do the update from the collections work with Jeff. How do you pronounce your last name?
Moingen.
Moingen.
Yes. Yes. A hand up for everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yep, and then you can put the other two on that table over there, or whatever you have left over there. Thank you. No email again.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jeff.
My name is Jeff Moingen, and I am the operations manager at Community Services, and I supervise the fraud collections and claims team. I wanted to today bring my team along. We are missing one individual, but I wanted to bring my team along to put a face to the names, to the jobs. So very proud of the work that this team of 3 does for our community. They maintain the integrity of our recipient eligibility processes, and they're making sure that benefits are given to those individuals at an appropriate level and eligible applicants and recipients. They do wonderful work. So bringing your attention to the document that I had sent you first, we have the fraud prevention investigations, and what I'm going to do is go through, there's 3 specific areas. There's a fraud, there's collections, and there's claims. So our fraud prevention investigation is our FPI program. This is a program that goes through the Office of Inspector General. It's a grant program, and in order to be awarded these grants, we have to follow specific data numbers, specifically our cost-benefit ratio on the bottom of the bottom right of that fraud piece. If you look at 2023, we have referrals cases. This is numbers of referrals coming from county workers, coming from the public, both inside our county and outside our county. Our cost savings, and our cost savings is what we saved by identifying fraud in a situation. Overpayments are the dollar amounts that we are, too many benefits were issued to a recipient due to an error. So those are overpayments that are set up that the recipients then pay back, or pay back typically. Our cost benefit ratio, we have to maintain a $3 cost benefit ratio to maintain our grant from the Office of Inspector General. The last 2 years have been off the charts with our tremendous numbers. Rochelle is a fairly new fraud investigator and has done a tremendous job. Rochelle and Alicia work very closely together on all of our fraud cases. And Alicia handles a lot of the policy that revolves around our fraud cases, and Rochelle does a lot of the investigations along with our fraud cases.
Jeff,
Pardon? Oh, I thought somebody said.
Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
before you
please.
move on? Yeah, just something that you just said, that just back up a little bit. You said that if there's a mistake made, because we're talking about fraud, but if somebody might be getting benefits, but it might not be fraud, it might be a mistake. Is that right?
That's 100%
Yep.
right. Yep. And that's going to be more of our next piece. So right now we're just talking about fraud that they're typically frauding the system or trying to. Many times in our fraud investigation, it's determined. In fact, most cases in our fraud investigations, it's determined that there is an error, or it's not an intentional fraudulent activity.
But there is some fraud going on where people are
Absolutely.
trying to game this system. And how long have you been doing this, Jeff?
About 2 years supervising this
Okay.
team.
Okay, so just trying to get a handle on if it seems like fraud is getting worse, or if things are getting better, or, I mean, in the 2
Yep.
years, can you gauge that? I mean, are people trying to scam it even more? I know there's a lot of bad people out there.
Yes, sir.
We see this, the 250 million to feed the children down in the cities, and, that case continues to work its way through the system. But what do you think, Jeff? Just your opinion on.
Yeah, and I think, we've attended, and I'll let Rochelle speak to this because I know that she wants to. But I know, based on some of our feedback from the fraud investigator conferences and the state of Minnesota, people are getting more tricky, a little smarter with how they're trying to get away with things. And this is where we're putting our energy and our effort into blatant intentional fraud, as opposed to the errors, or I made a mistake on my application, easier things like that. We give a slap on the wrist. We try to set up an overpayment. But some of the individuals, and I know, Rochelle, there's some some EBT skimming that's been going on. I'll let you kind of speak to some of that if you want.
Sure. So I, earlier in the year, for example, or probably maybe even a couple weeks ago, I think it was, the trend that we had discovered where people were making applications, and they're indicating that they were from Florida, and in turn, we don't really know where they're at. And our county recognized this trend, this newer one, where they were asking us to send cards off to somewhere else. And subsequently, I subpoenaed the IP address. We went through as far as we could regarding this, and then notified the state. And then I was able to communicate with other county agencies, and we were discovering that the party was still using the name that I had, applying to other places as well. So you're right, there are people that are here trying to fraudulently obtain our assistance. I also think it's important to note too that I know everything is like fiscal year stuff. What I did is I have something called the FACE system, and that's where I enter in all my data. And I think it's important to know that he had showed the last couple of years. So in 2023, for savings and overpayments, we had a total of $865,954 that I call it recovering, and that could be of various reasons, correct? There's errors, there are people who are failing to report adequate income, employment, and household composition, and that's what I basically investigate. I fully took over last fall, so I kind of wanted to see the number difference from 2024. And this is from January to November. And we have currently had a combined savings and overpayment total, and I'm not done this year, of a little over $1,015,655. So you are right, there are people that are going to be applying to abuse the system, but majority of the people who are here utilizing the funds that we have are good people who need that money. And there are the same select few or groups that I have recognized that are continuously making applications that they're not providing accurate information.
These dollars that you're talking about, are they actually levy dollars, or actually are county levy dollars, or where do they
No, no. This is all governed through the grant programs. Yep.
Yep.
Office of Attorneys.
Office, yep.
Inspector General.
Okay.
And we didn't include these numbers, these are internal numbers.
Yep. For our
Because the fiscal year, so one of the biggest things you'll notice too, the discrepancy of some of the numbers, the state reports on a state fiscal year, which is June, or July 1st through June 30th, and we do the calendar year. So that's why you'll see some of that discrepancy. But to answer your question in a nutshell, we are, Rochelle and Alicia are very actively pursuing these blatant disregard to these programs.
Who is the one that actually qualifies a person for the MA or for that assistance? Is that your office that qualifies them, or is it somebody else that?
Yep, it's our financial workers.
That
in
actually go
community
through it
services.
and
Yep,
say
yep. So
you-
that's where we get a lot of the fraud referrals from.
Right,
Is
right.
when they're interviewing these clients, there's something's not right. It's different from what they had said before, it's their applications are different.
Okay.
So then they would bring up a referral for us to investigate, whether it's blatant, whether it's, I made a mistake, whether it's I didn't report this job, this income, that type of thing, so. Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely a difference, but we want to have those dollars go towards people that need them as opposed to, obviously, intentional
Just,
program violations.
just another question on that one, if you don't mind. Do you ever make referrals for legal prosecution of some blatant
Yes.
stealing of?
That's an option, and there are options for that, and we haven't really done that too much in the past. And if I can do a little side note, when you look at this second section in here, kind of the middle, it says MA recoveries, and then below in 2023 it says DHS write-off. So this is medical assistance overpayments or recoveries for insurance purposes. So in 2023, June 1st, DHS mandated the forgiveness of all medical assistance related overpayments. So we ended up writing off or forgiving 145 healthcare overpayments at about $877,000, and that was mandated through the state. So that's why you're seeing this big number go down to $70. So to answer your question, one of the only ways now that we can pursue a medical assistance overpayment is through a criminal or court case.
Thank you.
Yep.
What's the criteria to get to that level?
It's a good question, and it's something that we've worked out or we've talked with the attorney's office for, and it would be, we look at a threshold of $5,000, $10,000, but there's kind of a case by case. How blatant is this situation? What's the case? We don't want to potentially give a felony to somebody that's.
So the state isn't giving us direction on it?
The state does not give us direction on this.
We're
no.
just establishing our own threshold?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, that is correct.
May I speak on
Yeah.
that too? So part of the fraud prevention investigation program, so when I receive a fraud referral, so from wherever it comes from, I will read through it and I'll start collecting my evidence, whatever that may be. And then at the end of that, it goes to my wonderful partner, Alicia, who's been absolutely amazing. I cannot stress the importance of, I wouldn't be as successful if I didn't have her because I didn't come from the background of public assistance, so she knows the rules like no one else. But she does, she really does. But she will review those cases and determine on what the overpayments are. And so then I make the ultimate decision, and I have 3 decisions essentially. One, I can send a warning out, which typically that's what I'll end up doing, whatever it may be. Or I can move forward on doing an intentional program violation, which I have increased those this year since going forth. And then that is based off of whatever evidence. How blatant is this? Because I have to prove to the state that I have clear and convincing evidence that an intentional program violation has occurred. If I cannot show clear and convincing evidence, which is just shy of probable cause, they will dismiss my case. And then the next step is then the criminal side of things, which, again, what I do there is once I determine that it warrants that, I go and make a request with the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office through their investigative division, as well as the prosecuting attorney, and then I present my case to them, which I already have done that on a few of my cases. So to also answer your question, yes, I have pushed, in some cases, criminal prosecution, 100%.
And that intentional program violation she's referring to, if we can prove that violation is intentional, the first act, if approved by the state, is that they're ineligible for that program for 1 year.
Or depending on how many other disqualifications are based on program. So you have MPIB, SNAP, general assistance. Mind you, medical assistance, I cannot disqualify anyone from medical assistance, no one.
Insurance.
So yes, they can fraud medical insurance, have an overpayment, and still receive medical assistance.
Yep.
We would cite an overpayment. At this point, it would have to go through the courts, either civilly or criminally. Our county attorney wants to pursue criminal, but then we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So there has to be very blatant misuse of the program in order to take it to that step. So.
And the sheriff's office is wonderful to work with. I presented one of my cases to Chris Brosey, and they had a prosecuting attorney there, Candace, and they accepted my case. There was a few things that, since I'm not a licensed police officer, that they have a little bit more ability to do to obtain some of the information that someone was not complying with me to get. And so they have been wonderful. They kept me posted on everything their steps. Brandon Henderson was the investigative deputy. He was great to work with. I couldn't say anything bad about working with them, so it was good. It was good.
The sheriff's deputy's head is swelling back there, just.
Do they?
Any questions so far? Otherwise, I can keep moving through some numbers. The public assistance at cash food portion below, we're still able to receive these overpayments. We're still able to investigate these specific programs as opposed to the medical assistance.
So do these dollars go back to the state then? Or
So far, otherwise I can keep
do they come back to?
Well, there's saving, yes.
So there's two divisions. Partial is savings that Rochelle gets to claim that would be future benefits. So we're allowed to claim 1 month of savings of whatever a person should have received. If there's a monetary change in the benefit amount from whatever date the issue occurred to where we got it corrected, that would create a claim or an overpayment. If it's a client error, we do collect a percentage. If the client is still open, the program will help pay itself back, and we do get percentages from those payments and/or savings back into the county. It varies depending on agency error, client error, some things like that, because sometimes I do create claims for agency errors also. That's not part of our numbers today, but that is one of the assignments I have, is to correct anything we may have done wrong too.
Thank you.
This might be a question more for Deb. Where does that show up where we would see that on our yearly financials that we see for the county? Does it get all mixed?
Recovery dollars?
Yes.
The
Does it all
recovery
get
dollars?
mixed into a,
Yep, so it would be the state recovery
Yeah.
dollars is those dollars come back to our revenue.
And there is a line item in the budget where you'll see
that's what I was
recovery
just wondering.
dollars.
Yep, okay.
Yep, and I'll talk about that one, this right now. So state recovery is when an individual has been on medical assistance. Typical case is in a nursing home or assisted living. They pass away. At that point, Carrie, who's not here today, she's our collections officer, and she would work with that family to try to recover any dollars that are remaining in the estate. So, for instance, if an individual was in assisted living for a year, they received taxpayer-funded services worth $100,000 that is recoverable from the state, she would then work with the family to try to recover those funds. More cases than not, the family does not have those funds. So that's the problems that we, not problems, but that's the, when you see some of these numbers, if you look at, if you flip your page over, you'll see the estate recovery county incentive, and the bottom of this, my apologies. Yeah. So we've received so far, 2022 was a tremendous year for us. And there's a lot of things that come into that. So you'll see 2023 was $563,000 in estate recovery collections. 2024 thus far is at $483,000. Our stretch goal to try and hit is about $560,000 in a year. And that's very, very good. A lot of things play into these dollar amounts. How large claims are. Some people don't have any claims at all. Some people have very small claims. Some people have very large claims. Does the deceased have any assets? You know, what we run into a lot is homes. You know, do we want to always kick people out of their homes? You know, what are the situations we want to be? We want to keep family involved as much as possible in these cases. So again, family planning as well for the estate recovery piece. There's a lot of family planning that happens to make some of the assets in the estate ineligible for recovery. So it's very, it's to say terms, it's hit and miss on what assets a person has. And that's why you're seeing kind of the up and down numbers. So in 2024, we are about right on track for a stretch goal to try to recover. And if you look at the very last piece, this is based on 2023 fiscal year. This is what DHS has available currently. And this just shows a ranking of counties and their estate recovery dollars. So Hennepin, Ramsey, Anoka, Dakota, all these, or not, Anoka's not on there, sorry. But so many of these big counties and their recoveries, and it shows their population. Crow Wing County is ranked number 8 in counties for estate recovery. And I think that is absolutely tremendous for the work that's done. And Carrie really does a wonderful job. I wish she was here to take the credit, because it's a hard job. It really is. You know, we want to do as much as we can for these families, but we still have a responsibility that we need to try to recover these assets to go back into that bucket to help other families.
That bucket it goes back into, is that our bucket as far as the county? It's a state
It's a
bucket.
state bucket.
And so
we
you're a
collect-
collection agency for the state in
Yes.
some ways?
Yep,
But
correct. Well, we're
there is-
mandated by the state, but so if we recover $100,000 in an estate recovery, our county incentive, which is that,
Yep.
Yep.
that top, we get to keep approximately 25% of that, depending on the
Right.
program.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
our incentive to keep going on that.
Yep, that's what I was kind of getting at.
And
That's
you're-
the portion we get. So
Yep.
that's why you rank in the top 10 there, where Crow Wing County is ranked as number 8. They're doing aggressive work to collect and to make sure that they're
And we're
getting at those
getting- and
estate
the-
recoveries, because there is a benefit to us to be able
Absolutely.
to recover as much as we can.
Yep.
And did you say initially you're grant funded?
Say one more time.
Did you say initially that you're grant funded?
For the fraud program.
For the fraud
Yes,
program.
not for the
So
collections
not all of
officer
this is
position.
levy, so,
Right,
Yep.
so the fraud program, like what
Yep.
Rochelle and Alicia were talking about, the fraud program is funded through the state. That is a state-funded grant that is funded for that particular purpose.
Right.
The recoveries, if you will, for the estate recoveries, the part that's funded, that's not on levy in that regard, is through those recovery incentive
Right.
dollars that we're getting. That's the portion that we get as a benefit for us to do the work. Here's the incentive for us to do the work. We get to have those dollars for that purpose.
so it's some offset there.
Something that, yes.
So if the state chooses not to do that grant anymore for the fraud, what happens to this department?
I go away.
If, well, if the
go- you
state,
go away.
if the state chooses,
Hopefully they don't.
Pretty brutally honest, I would.
it depends
go
on
away.
if they don't fund it and still require that the work has to be done. The work that they're doing is mandated. That's a
Yep.
mandate through the state that they have to do fraud prevention and recoveries. That is part of the work that has to get done. Now, if the state chooses not to fund that work, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to take away the requirement that that work has to be done.
You'll
That
still,
would then fall on the
you'll still be there
taxpayers.
doing it.
Right.
And how I understand that is the state has got a grant for that based off of federal guidance and requirements. So
There's a lot of moving
there's
parts
a lot of
that are
moving
connected
parts
in
where
this.
the federal requirements would have to change probably for the state to no longer fund.
And there's many counties that don't have their proprietary fraud investigator. They share with other counties, their investigators, so we're
That
very fortunate
Minnesota
for that.
Prairie Alliance, is that what
Yes.
they are? That's what
Yes.
Well,
that
and
is.
they also have licensed officers and non-licensed officers as well. So like like for example, one of my partners in Mille Lacs County, Andrew, he has a whole district. And then like in Cass County, they have a licensed deputy that does the investigations there. Here, we don't have a licensed officer. You have me. And so, yeah, yep. And I think it's a very important thing, because you're right. We may not necessarily be bringing money back per se to our county with some of those things, but my job is to maintain the integrity of this program, and will continue to maintain the integrity of this program.
And it's savings, the savings that would be otherwise going out. You're just
Yep,
not seeing
yep.
them come back necessarily.
Right.
I'm pretty much out of questions. It's one of those things, as a new commissioner, it's like, it's like, holy mackerel, how long has this been going on? So, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for coming in and making your
It's a very delicate job, and
presentation.
it's
Yeah.
hats off to this team. They're wonderful.
Okay. Any other questions from the
No,
board?
obviously do a wonderful job, so that
Thank you.
the numbers back it up, but there's a lot more behind the scenes that takes place.
Well, yes, yes,
And there
sir.
seems to be some enthusiasm with you doing it, too.
Yes.
I'm very proud of my position.
Yes, you are.
100%, I am. It's very important. It holds the community accountable, and not only that, but it gives the taxpayers in our county rest assured that if, whatever I receive as a fraud referral, I'm going to investigate it. And hopefully it doesn't result in anything, but if
Right.
it does, I'm gonna be there to investigate it.
Integrity of those funds. Yep.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the long-range transportation plan.
Morning, Matt.
You guys want copies of?
They have that in their packet.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. Matt Calroos, Transportation Planner for the Highway Department. In the crowd is Tim Bray. If any questions are over my head, he'll step in, so. But good to see you all. So the Long Range Transportation Plan, wanted to give you an update on that today. Where we are, a brief overview on kind of an outline and some chapters that we've identified as key points throughout the plan. Get some feedback on a survey that we've developed, the questions specifically, and then give a little overview of the project website that we've been developing with Nate Rose with the GIS and having a GIS layer within that as well. And then a little overview on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. I think it was back in May I was before you all for a resolution to apply for that. We have been awarded. We've been working on a grant agreement, and I'll give a little bit of a way that how these plans will intertwine with each other, because there's a lot of relation to one another, although one is more in depth, and the long-range plan is more of a level of we got the comp plan, and the long-range plan will work with that and be the highway's guiding document for hopefully the next 15 to 20 years. So if the first slide you'll see, so what is a long-range transportation plan? And for Crow Wing County, it's something that they've never had, so it's a unique opportunity. It's kind of aligned well with me coming on board. It's last March, or 2 Marches ago, 2023. It's flying by. So first for Crow Wing County, it's a very an initiative that I think will make Crow Wing County stand out from other counties. When you look at where plans have been done outside of the metro, it's few and far in between. St. Louis County, I think even Cass County has one, but where the population is higher is where these exist, and for Crow Wing County to get this, it'll set up for the next 15 to 20 years. And so when this first was talked about, both Tim and I and Rob were kind of leaning towards a consultant, put them on board. But we didn't really want the wishy-washy template stuff that some consultants do, so we've decided to do this in-house, make it our own, put our own twists on it, and that really comes with, I think, having a planner as myself, being able to apply the wording that engineers don't always really like to use, and they can get all the data and all that, and I can make the map. So it's been a really good framework, I think, that we've developed, and a plan that we have going forward. And it's also timing well with the comp plan just being adopted. This will drill down farther on that, specifically for the highway. And this will act, as I said, kind of the guiding document, hopefully up to 2020 or 2040, 2045 in that area, and be updated every 5 years or so, or as things change. And a big thing with that, just like the comp plan, we're trying to forecast, what's the system going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20. I mean, in 20 years, everything could be electric. It could be, things change all the time. The evolution of the transportation field has been a lot in the last. If you look, 20 years back from now, where we were to now, and then you look forward another 20, there's a lot there. So, and then the system as a whole, we're looking at the entirety of how transportation works within the county, not just the roads and the cars on them. We want to look at transit, the bike ped infrastructure, freight, rail, air, airports. All of that will be in this. Next slide. And so here is where I'd be seeking any feedback that you all would have. These are kind of the key elements or chapters that we've identified to date. This is subject to change. I know Tim and I talked this morning. We might already have some additions to this, but we've been meeting for the past several months. We dwindled it down to this. We've been studying past plans that were done by other counties, mainly in the metro, seeing what chapters they had, the key elements. Obviously, we're Crow Wing County. We're a little different. We've twisted things our own way. This isn't a copy of any other counties. We wanted to get at least a base point of where others started their framework, and we took it from there and made our own bones. But if you had any questions on any of the 9 listed here, I'd be happy to answer, or I can give clarification I know they're just kind of bullet points, but I could read through them all and kill 15 minutes, but I don't think you want that.
Nice try.
And I'm sure when we have our
Try, Matt. Nice try.
when we have our TAC meeting as well, if questions come up between now and then, I can answer some there as well, so.
Okay.
Here's a timeline. This is also subject to change. The main thing I think that Tim and I wanted to showcase here was by basically December 31st of 2025, we want this long-range transportation plan to be completed. So it's been a little hard to get the ball rolling at this point with that SS4A grant played a role in that, trying to figure out how these complemented each other, and then making the decision, we're going to do this long-range plan in-house. And then figuring out, okay, now what do we do? How do we get the framework for that? So we're off and running now. We're starting.
Real quick question, Matt.
Yep.
Of the 87 counties, you take the metros out of there, how many counties actually have one of you there in their county doing transportation planning? Because that's pretty much the reason you're here, right?
Yep.
And something I know Tim had talked about even before, having you get in this place. So this is the first time we've ever done this plan, right? It isn't
Correct.
like a redo of a plan.
Correct.
So there is a little time that takes to kind of get it ramped up, so.
Correct, yeah, it's been looking at others, and obviously the metro, their plans are, 500 to 1,000 pages, and it's just mind-boggling to comprehend it, where our system, it's smaller, but there's a lot of data. The data that's there, that's the big thing that needs to be collected. And to that point, streetlight data is something that we've signed up for, and I'll probably show you guys at the TAC meeting more, but it's something that you can just plug and play and get things in a report in 5 minutes. It's a really cool tool that we'll be utilizing for both this and the SS4A, so.
Thank you.
Matt?
Yes.
Matt, I've got a question. So I've talked to our great county engineer about, I've got a lot of county dirt roads or gravel roads down in my district. And, I've heard from some of my constituents, and it's kind of been something that I'd like to pursue. Is this plan where you look at those county dirt roads like County Road 139, which we invested like $800,000 to fix it up? Is this where you initially put that in there as a potential down the road, like 4, 5, 10 years, or is that what this would be all about?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Corin. Specifically, probably the roads won't be named in the year that would happen, but there is a chapter, the future transportation needs, where we look at gravel versus bituminous, and how we'll probably come up with some sort of formula or some sort of, there'll at least be a chapter on it. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but it'll lay the baseline of, when we come to a decision on if something should be changed from gravel to bituminous, this document will help us make that decision. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I just want to put that on our radar, or at least have it in the plan, that it's something. That's why I kind of wanted to have, every quarter have a meeting. I just want to have the commissioners that are elected be able to have more input. Before, we'd have 1 4-hour meeting a year. You guys would roll out the plan, and throughout the year, I don't know, I just didn't feel like I had a whole lot of input into it. If that makes sense.
Nope, totally understandable, and thanks for that comment. And I know the SS4A, that Safe Streets and Roads for All, that'll get more in depth on project specific, and it'll rank, there'll be a tiering system, and that'll be very in depth on, that'll give a more direct answer on maybe when a road would go from gravel to bituminous. You can go to the next slide. And so then I just wanted to give a brief snapshot. This is a project website that I've been working on with Nate Rose, our GIS coordinator. This will be where the public can always utilize this link. It'll show our project updates as we go through the process so everybody can stay involved. There's a brief, right now there's just an overview, some of the trends and goals that we're utilizing that intertwine with the comp plan. And then on the next slide, gets into some of the public engagement that we want to utilize, and this will serve both for the long-range transportation plan and the SS4A grant. So if you remember from the comp plan when Bolton and Mank had their input ID that they use, working with Nate, he's been able to make something in-house for us to utilize rather than contract out and spend X amount of dollars. This was free, done by him, and it does the exact same thing where if you have a concern at an intersection or anywhere along the county highway system, you can drop a pin, make a comment, or drop a pin. There's some generic ones on the left if something's working well or something's not working, things of that nature. But we just want to make sure the comment or the public has as much ways that they can interact as possible. And this will be anonymous, so that kind of helps people open the door and be sometimes brutally honest, which is a good thing in this aspect, I think.
Matt, are those live on the website now?
Nope.
Do you have an ETA of when that's going to be?
So this was done by his intern with Nate, and I actually had a phone call with Nate yesterday. The survey he's ready to put live, but there's something with Esri where he has to make a claim where it's over my head on the GIS spectrum, but he's working on it. And I told him kind of hopefully after the TAC meeting, I think we want to have everything solidified survey-wise and this mapping software done. So after that TAC meeting, I told him that deadline, and he was okay with that. Next slide, please. I won't read through all of these as well, but if you did have a chance to look beforehand, these were some of the survey questions that we came up with. I believe there's a total of 13, and if you do look at them, or if you had looked at them, They are a little different than, I think, your typical survey, and that was something both Tim and I and Rob wanted to make sure that we weren't putting out a survey that was, for example, do you like roundabouts? Yes or no? What does that when you look at it, what decision does that help you make? Like, oh, I guess they like them, we'll keep putting them in, but where do they want them? So if you look at, question, I went ahead a little bit, but there's a question, what intersection needs safety improvements? That kind of goes, it gives you a specific location and what those, what the community members are seeing out there that we might not see. A lot of the data is crash related, and sometimes there's a lot of close calls, but maybe not a lot of data to back that. So to be able to get feedback from them specifically, and each one of these questions is a text box that they're asked to basically type in an answer. I think there's only 2 questions where we have them. Question 7, we ask them to select or prioritize a couple projects, and question 8, we want them to rank some safety measures that we've deployed, so we can kind of get a feel for, what they like and don't like.
So this is on the website already?
The survey's ready to go. The website, Nate's having some Esri issues, which runs the ArcGIS, but the surveys can be live when we're ready to shoot it out.
Okay. It's not out there yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
We'll make a nice blast out and promote it the best we can once that happens. And I think hopefully we can get good results. I think that 371 study that Bolton and Manx doing, they got a couple hundred, so.
199 of those were mine, though.
Well, make good comments on 48 for us and get the trail coming for you.
Thank you.
We can, yeah, if there's any questions on any of the specific survey questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Like we said, we kind of wanted to, I know the first, as a planner, the first survey I brought to Tim's office, he kind of wanted to rip it up in a way. It was the fluffy planner language, and so we kind of worked together in a nice.
Engineer, planner, this is a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the good relationship there, yeah. A visionary and somebody who wants to be detailed.
Yeah, it took us a couple rewrites. I think even the day before I sent this in, we put in 2 new questions, so it's been fun.
I think it touches all the bases that.
I think so too. And there are a couple in there as well that serve in a way for the SS4A. There's an equity piece that SS4A grant requires, and we put those in here to kind of check that box as well. So we're trying to mesh these together the best we can so we're not having to do 2 things, or redo things, I should say, in the future. And if there's no questions on the survey itself, I can give an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant.
Sure, please do.
So we applied in May. We got a notice of funding that we were going to be awarded in September. And so that was the total amount federal is $200,000. And with that, there's a $50,000 match. But with that match, and I think I teed this up when I presented for the resolution in May, through MnDOT, there's an IIJA state match program.
IIJA, acronym for OR.
Oh, good
Federal
question.
government.
I didn't write that one down.
I don't remember it either, but.
Oh, look at that, I got them both scrambling.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Yes, that was
Okay,
on
thank
the,
you.
I was just going to say that.
Yep.
Yeah,
there's too many acronyms to keep track of nowadays, but, yeah, so that's through MnDOT, and it was over $200 million set aside through the legislature to match programs that were utilizing IIJA funds. And so there's still, I want to say there's $60 to $70 million left over. We've applied for that. We should know within hopefully 5 to 6 weeks if we get that or not. The SS4A qualifies. It's if there's money will be there. I assume money will be there. So once that comes up, I will bring that to you guys to officially apply or accept the funds. But back to the SS4A, like the long-range plan, initially when we applied, we checked the box on the grant that we would utilize a consultant. And then after, I think, the kickoff meeting, Tim and I guess Tim mainly, had the idea of, let's do this in-house too. It's seemed like a kind of a wow factor for me, but he laid it out nicely where we have the staff. The way this next construction year is laid out, it times well with where we can utilize engineering staff, because there's a lot of data that needs to be collected and a safety analysis, and this is going to lay out the projects on, if you've ever seen the county road safety plan of, a star system of, if they have, vulnerabilities, if there's curvature that doesn't align with the safety standards or things of that nature, they get in these ranking systems, and we have the engineering staff to do that, hopefully start that this winter, actually. But so that's through the federal, that's a federal grant, and so we're doing a grant agreement right now, and hopefully within, our point of contact says 2 to 3 months is when they turn that around, so it'll be a bit before I bring that back to you, and we can officially start charging hours to that, which is unfortunate, but to be able to do it in-house, I think, is another huge bonus for us, so. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about that as well.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions, but I just want to note that Matt has written several grant applications for us, been very successful, writes excellent grants, and I just want to acknowledge my appreciation for what you've done with the grant process for the Highway Department, so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrows.
Any other questions from the board? Paul, any questions from you?
No, Mr. Chair, if I have a question, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Matt. Now we have the Ross Lake number 9 easement.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Thank you for your time today. Yes, we have a easement request from Megan Tashi in Ross Lake Township, Section 9. So Megan approached us because she is selling her property, and the future owner and his title company and mortgage people need a legal access to get to the property. And so the PID, tax forfeited PID we're talking about here is 890-40505. This is in Ross Lake Township, right off the Lens Road and Conrad 106. So the Lens Road for us is one of our recorded county forest roads. It's a road that we manage and maintain. It's a prescriptive easement road. And so if you can go to the next map, please. Yeah, so this is a little zoomed in area here. The easement they're requesting is 61 feet long and 33 feet wide. Worked with Gary and the assessors, and we determined a value of about $2,400. So we're here today to present this to you guys and see if there's preliminary support, if the Tashis should move forward with completing a survey and then filling out our easement document. We don't see any adverse impacts to our forest management activities. There's an existing driveway that you can see in the map that they're using today. They just need something recorded for the sale of the property. And if you look on the map, it appears that there's a wet spot next to that, but that's just a shadow of a tree. So I wanted to point that out. This is good high ground.
Can you back it up? Go back one slide if you don't mind, for that whole, it shows the whole parcel. Now, it shows private property red shaded. Is that, the Tashi property is just that property?
Yeah,
They don't own the rest of it. That's all privately owned by other people.
Correct. Miss Tashi just owns those 240s that are outlined in white.
Okay.
Yep. And then
Is
the non-shaded.
there access for all that other private property then? There must be access somewhere else on the...
The other private property owners? Well, so it's yeah, they may have access off the Lens Road, or, they may not need the legal access like the Tashis do to, to sell the property. The county board has a policy that any, forest road or trail is open, as long as it's not posted closed to a certain use. So, historically, the Tashis have been able to cross this little 61-foot piece of tax forfeited land by our policy. But that policy does not suffice for
Who's ever buying it or who's
the
ever.
mortgage company and the title
mortgage co-
company
The
that-
underwriter
that the
for it,
seller
yep.
has. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That 40 that's right below the Tashi, then, that's our land there, that's kind of out of the, it's, you know, kind of in the middle of private land. Is that something we've worked at over the years, trying to put those parcels, you know, get rid of those parcels and put other parcels, you know, in place?
Correct, yep. Your land asset management program,
Right.
and our policy of divesting of those types of parcels that are isolated in nature and trying to get larger blocks of tax buffered land. Over the years, we've worked with the Tashis a lot. They provided us timber access, you know, free of charge for a long time.
Okay.
And so lately, I think the property was split up and now it's being divested, but yeah, that is a candidate for us. That parcel is pretty much all low ground, so
Okay.
value to maybe a
Nobody
hunter,
really
but-
wants it then.
maybe a hunter, hard to say, but it's remote country,
Okay.
to say the least.
I don't really have any more questions.
If everything sounds all right, I'll work with the Tashis to,
Put that on the consent agenda?
So you'll have the authorization on the consent agenda for the next county board meeting?
probably not the next, they have to go complete a survey.
Okay.
And then they have some easement language work to do, and it'll need to be reviewed by the county attorney, so it might.
Everything has been
yeah.
completed and it's ready to go? You're okay with it being on a consent
Yes,
agenda for
yes.
whenever it is complete?
It could be a month or two, though, just in all
Yep.
fairness, they have to hire their own surveyor, and they have some legwork to do before we come back.
So Tom has your authority to move forward with getting all the access information that's needed for the owner to do, for the Tashis to do the work that needs to get done, and it'll come back before you when it's ready for final approval.
Yes, that makes,
I see a lot of head nods.
Yep.
Thank you, have a good day.
I see we have land use ordinance updates with Chris Pence. Is he,
I just asked Gary.
if he's here, or is he missing it, or?
Gary is on here if you want to talk to him.
Yeah, Gary?
Yeah, Chris is on his way up, I believe. I
Okay.
can start if he's not in there.
We've got he's got 3 minutes, you know, so we're in pretty good shape here.
Uh, Give him 1 minute, he should be there.
As long as we're waiting, I guess I have a question. Is Tom still there, or?
No.
I can get Gary, I guess. So I guess just a question. I think, obviously, I know the answer to this, that, you know, if we're granting, pardon me?
Rosemary was just saying something.
Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. So just a question on this easement. I'm always skeptical about easements, but Gary, apparently, if you guys are, I mean, you must do a lot of diligent work to make sure that you're not, once you put this easement on there permanently and, you know, 10 years down the road, we decide to sell that piece of property, kind of devalues it in a way, but I'm guessing that you guys really do a lot of work, whether or not you feel like there should be an easement on any given property, correct?
That is correct. In this case, since it really was only 60 feet long and kind of some of it, you could say, is a little bit of maybe road ditch, we feel that it's not impacting our current forestry management on that parcel. Doesn't mean that a future owner wouldn't maybe want that easement, but we have went with historical practice that they've been using that little driveway access and always come for your consideration. And then we do come up with a value that we believe are made whole if we are putting a permanent forever easement on the property.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination, but yeah, we do a lot of diligence. So if we had a request, not all of them come to you because we do vet and kind of talk with some owners that say, we're we're not in support of this, they can always come and talk to the board, but there are sometimes easements where we're like, this doesn't make any sense for the county to grant an easement in certain situations too.
Oh, good. So you're weeding out some of this stuff.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to know.
And they are paying for that easement, right? So that, you know, and when you really think about it, it's 33 feet wide and 61 feet long, $2,400, you know, if you know, permanent easement, yeah, that's a fair amount of money for that little chunk of property.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Chris. Is there anything else? Chris is here for your update.
Just want to give the board a quick update on where we're at with the land use ordinance and the next steps with that. And so we had it out, it's in the process of out for public comment. We've only received one comment on the ordinance since it came from DNR. If you remember when I was here chatting about it last month, there was a provision that we were talking about eliminating the ordinance that talked about the one per parcel for a dwelling unit. And so we went to the Planning Commission at the meeting last month as well and had a work session with them, and they weren't supportive of that provision. They think that we should still be one dwelling per parcel. And the DNR also said that going away from one dwelling per parcel would not be in line with the shoreline rules from the state perspective, and so from both of those terms. So basically, we removed that provision from the ordinance being changed, so we'll just leave our intent at this point, depending, obviously board approval, to leave that in there. A couple other things that the Planning Commission brought up they thought was important.
Chris, before you move on, I guess I didn't understand that. We've always let people, build a little guest cabin, or I don't know what you'd call it. Is that what you're talking about, is eliminating that?
No, Commissioner Coring, what we're referring to is that we have some situations where folks have large parcels. And we have some folks that come in that sometimes what they would like to do, instead of parceling it off and creating individual lots for those different dwellings, they want to just get a permit. So let's say that if they were, for easy numbers, let's say they're zoned rural residential 5 and they had 20 acres, let's say. We have some folks that come in that say, we just want to build 4 houses out here based on our density, but we don't want to create new individual lots. And so that had been something that had happened in the past. And then the ordinance was updated to say, no, we only want to have one dwelling per parcel. And so that was the question was, from a policy perspective, what is the goal of and intent of the board? That doesn't have the impact on, say, a guest cabin. We call it a guest cottage in the ordinance, or the guest quarters, which would be living space over top of a garage. So it doesn't have the impact on that. It's just a matter of how many dwellings, would we allow on a piece of property based on the density if they were to actually subdivide the property into individual lots. So that's what the question is.
So what we want to do is we want to make sure somebody has an individual lot of record.
Correct.
Serving. Okay,
Yes.
well, that's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it?
For some folks, for most situations, yes, we have some situations where folks aren't interested in subdividing their property into creating that individual lot of record, but they'd still want to build, say, 4 houses because maybe they want to build a house for a child or a family member of some sorts. And so they don't want to subdivide the property, but they still want to have more houses on the property than would be one per parcel. So that's the situation we run into those once in a while. We have those around the county right now. We have some special ones where we have larger tracts where it's family owned, and there's numerous, cabins is what it would be for those folks on those properties. But that's the intent behind it, is saying if you want to have a dwelling, it needs to have its own individual lot of record to be able to get a permit to build that dwelling.
I think that makes total sense. I don't know how you could even, if you're going to go get a loan at the bank, I don't know how you could get a loan without owning that individual lot.
Well, it's situations where the folks that own the property didn't always have to get a mortgage. They had the cash, to be able to build on their own, and so it wasn't common. It didn't happen a lot, but there were just certain situations where that's what the desire was. And I think after hearing from the board and from the Planning Commission, it seems to make sense, like you mentioned, to have one dwelling per per lot of record, so we'll continue with that.
Yeah, it seemed to me that, I mean, when that was brought up, it makes sense, you know, like with the 40 acres I have, I could build a house here and there. Okay, but I'm not gonna be there forever, and those kids won't be there forever. And then all of a sudden, it'll be coming up and saying, well, it's always been that way. Well, maybe we need to make sure we do it so it will be that way in 50 years where it will work,
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Absolutely does.
instead of
Yeah.
running those other ones, so.
Yep. The other item that the planning commission wanted amended was, if you remember, we had the provision, the ordinance talk about setback averaging. So if you have two dwellings on each side of the property, you can take the setback average, and then that would be where you would be able to build. And the planning commission just wanted to make sure that that would only apply if you didn't have a building envelope. So if you do have an envelope and you can meet setbacks, you should. And so we put language in there to make sure that if you do have a spot to build that meets setbacks, you have to do that before you can consider doing the averaging. So just to be clear on that one, and so I think that was important to clarify that. And then the last one, the comment that
Chris, before you go on,
Yeah.
I do, for clarification,
yes,
so we give out variances quite often. And so I added an addition onto my house, and I get my variance, and then the lot next door wants to build. Is the average based on my original footprint or on the new footprint?
it'd be on the new
with my
footprint.
variance?
Yep, it'd be on the new footprint.
So aren't we creating a situation where they don't have to ask for a variance to encroach on that shoreline?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of misconceptions over variances and what gets approved. Very rarely do you ever see a variance where, let's say they've got a setback today where they're 53 feet away from the lake. Very rarely do you see somebody getting a variance to be 51 to go forward. Typically, they can go sideways and to the rear, but not any closer to the lake. So we don't see a lot of those types of variances being approved. I can't really remember too many that we have where the people can actually go closer to the lake than what's currently already on the property. So I think from a perspective of this is going to be the situation where, you know, you look along the shoreline and you've got houses at 60 feet, 60 feet, 60 feet, 60 feet, you know, and be very common where at and to allow this provision for that setback averaging is going to reduce the burden on that landowner to be able to improve their property. And it's as I was doing some more research, we're not the only county that has that by a long shot. Most counties do. You know, Aiken County has it. I know out like Douglas County, and a lot of the counties that have lots of lakes like we do. And it takes of the more situations where it's a pretty simple variance, a simple request what they're asking for. Still putting in provisions for stormwater, shoreline buffers, erosion control, stormwater management, all those provisions that would still be there. It just reduces that regulatory burden on folks to go through that process with ones that are fairly cut and dried when looking at it from the neighborhood situation that's out there.
I just want them to be cautious, John, when you give out variances, because even though we might not have many, it could start a trend, and I just get nervous about that slippery slope approach.
Well, and I think it's important to know too that, you know, I think there's another misconception of everybody gets a variance. Well, they don't. And so as you go through the development review team process, we vet every single application before they even come to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment for consideration. A lot of situations where people are told that it's not going to get approved, you need to come up with a different plan, and they come up with a plan that works based on staff recommendation, based on what we've seen working with the Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment on previous type of applications. And so people don't get everything that they ask for. I just give you an example. We had last month, we're having an application this month where the folks came in and they wanted to get a variance because they wanted to build in a new cabin, and it's a really weird situation because now the wetland that goes behind it is now considered part of the lake after we worked with DNR on that. And so now instead of they've almost got like this peninsula set up, but they wanted to have 3 water-oriented accessory structures, and we said, no, that's not going to get approved. And so we worked through that with the landowner. So before they even now the application will be before, John and the members on Thursday, they're asking for one, and it meets the ordinance requirements, so they don't need a variance for that. And so those are the things that we get vetted out ahead of time, because we let the applicant know that they can apply for it, but the odds of them getting approved or something like that are not real strong. And so we help them to really try to put together the best application that they can that would get approved, and following, to the ordinance as tightly as we can, and putting on, we think conditions to mitigate any sort of impacts with, stormwater management, shoreline buffers, erosion control, all those sorts of things that I think at the end of the day really matter for the water quality of Crow Wing County.
One of the things you mentioned in the beginning, when we were talking about this line of sight, you said that it still has to be in the building envelope. Does that mean you stay within that 75-foot setback, or whatever that setback is? Or when you say you go line of sight, you go encroach in that?
So if they have the ability to meet the setbacks, they have to meet the setbacks.
Okay. It's only if that very hard or very cumbersome for them to be able to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I interrupted you, and you were going to go on and say something else.
No, I think that pretty much. Oh, the other piece was that just when we have a current definition of marina in the ordinance, but it discussed what ancillary services were, and the DNR just gave us some feedback and said you might want to list what those ancillary services might be, which would be parking, providing gas, those sorts of things, so that you can better have a definition of what that is. So that was included as well as part of the definition. So kind of a modest amendment, but just more for clarification on what a marina is. So the plan is that this will go to the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment Thursday night this week for the public hearing. And then pending their review and the public feedback and all the input we get, they'll make a recommendation to the county board, and then this should come to the board. I'll work with Debbie if we want to go, which meeting in December we would want to hit. So, but it'll definitely in December. And the important thing to remember is that the important part of the ordinance is getting the cannabis Article 15 approved, so that we have rules and regulations in place when it comes time for that. It comes January 1 when that can be an option for folks to run businesses in the county. We want to make sure we have our controls in place so that we have all that organized and ready to go.
So, Mr. Chair, I do have some additional questions.
And so do I. Go first, sir.
I sent you a list of questions last night or yesterday afternoon for today's meeting.
I didn't get the email, I'm sorry.
So here's my
Okay.
questions. So under 1712A3, it says this is an interim use article. The use will be required to receive approval of a new interim use permit upon change of ownership unless at least one person or entity is the same full or partial owner as the previous owner. And I believe the intent of the interim use permit is about a time-sensitive period, which includes the ownership. If we start including partnerships and LLCs and that, why aren't they applying for a CUP? Because in effect, according to this, that's what they would have, because if I have a partner and I pass away or get bought out, the IUP continues.
Correct.
They bring on a new person, they get bought out or pass, it now moves on to that person, so you're into perpetuity here.
Well, so yeah, and so I think it's important to remember when an interim use permit is approved, is tied to a certain ownership. So let's say that owners A and B apply for the conditional use permit, and owner B now is no longer part of the process, and then owner A decides that they want to sell to owner C. Then that new owner is going to have to come in, even though how they've organized their ownership. It still matters what name is on the actual interim use permit. That's who that permit is for. It's not for subsequent owners coming on. So the intent behind that is to say if there's owner A and B, and owner B decides to leave, owner A stays on, they can still continue that interim use permit. But if there's new ownership added on to that, then they'd have to come in and apply to renew that to get a new interim use permit. So. But
the owner is an LLC. So an LLC is an individual, or I mean, it's a limited partner corporation.
Right.
So whoever is the owner of that is that.
For us, when you look in the ordinance, it does talk about those, that is considered to be a person that would be able to, we have LLCs that apply for permits now.
So that LLC could go on forever and have many different people that were the principals of that LLC over time. So
that is a challenging part of that.
That's the challenge I think he's talking about, is the fact that it isn't an interim ordinance, and it's an ordinance to an LLC, and as long as that LLC is a viable LLC, it doesn't matter who is
Yeah, we don't
actually the
get-
name
We don't
behind
get
it.
behind the scenes of who, who is the principals in those LLCs and that, so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something, that'll be coming up. Is that the one we're working on? Is that for the interim?
Correct. Right, the new ordinance that we have proposed, the draft introduces interim use permits as an option.
Yep.
And then interim use permits for the cannabis uses,
Yeah.
So I'd like to see some more thought in that.
Okay.
Maybe some clarification or something, just my opinion. And then I'm going to move on to number 10. I got to get there, so if you'll bear with me a minute. Is that Florida?
Is that Florida calling?
I think it was Jim in the back row.
So this is under 10.2I.
Okay.
And here, so I'm going to kind of combine these last two questions I have. So 10.2I and 10.2L. So the first one talks about commercial, and we're going away from 2 levels of commercial to 1.
Oh, sure. Yep,
So we had a CEI, C1 and a C2.
Correct.
We're now going to just commercial.
correct, yep.
I think there's some distinct differences between those 2 levels of development.
Okay,
And when we go to just 1, we're just opening up the doors for any commercial development anywhere. Moving on to the industrial one, which is the next one, we're doing the same thing. We're getting rid of light and heavy industrial and only going with industrial.
correct.
And again, there's a significant difference potentially between light and heavy. And I think that we're not watching the hen house, so to speak, close enough, because there could be a cement factory built next door to potentially a residential area, depending on, where the placement of it is, or in the city limits. And I think that we've seen some of that, and we want to kind of make sure that they are placed in the appropriate setting for whatever their use is. So I think by collapsing it to 1, we're just opening the floodgates on either one, whether it's commercial or industrial.
Well, we could go through the land use tables, and I could show you the differences between what the difference would be between the two, if that would help. Just show the current uses that we have, what would be the difference between commercial 1 and commercial 2, what were the differences between the two?
I can come in tomorrow afternoon.
Okay,
and-
sure,
And we'll just sit down and go through
sure.
that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to show you that.
That's my concern, is that I
Yeah.
don't want to just open up the doors so
Sure.
they can say, well, we can build some kind of big factory right on 371 next to North Long Lake or something.
Yeah, I don't think that would, the way that's organized, I don't think that would really, potentially would be an option, but we could definitely.
Going back to
definitely-
commercial, so Rosemary and I had an issue a few years ago with a development on 118 for those storage buildings.
Correct.
And so I think the board at that time decided that we wanted those kind of commercial developments on our corridors of commerce, not on those back county roads. And I think this change in policy is changing what we had set in place probably 4 years ago, something like that, maybe 5 years ago. And I think that we need to have further discussion on that.
Sure.
And then you mentioned township roads in there, and we don't have really any authority on township roads, do we?
As far as township roads is,
Commercial development?
absolutely we do. Sure, sure we do,
Okay.
because so you have to remember, we have all the townships, but we have all the zoning for all the townships except for, Crowing Township and Irondale. And so, yeah, we absolutely still have that. So we have, the county board is one who decides where the zoning is in the different townships and that, so.
And to be clear, you weren't here at the time,
Right,
so
and
that
so,
was-
and just to be clear, when we're talking about those commercial storage buildings and things we're talking like on 118, the only thing that's changed since I've been here is that those were a permitted use previously, now they're conditional use permits. So we haven't changed the land use districts upon which they are allowed those, are allowed to be built in. So that hasn't changed since, since I've been back. It'll be 2 years in January. So we can look at that and decide if we want to change where we put, these commercial storage buildings and that. But right now, the land use district that was approved 4 years ago hasn't changed since I've been here. So that hasn't, it's only gone from a permitted use to a conditional use. That's the only change in the ordinance.
We'll go through that a little more tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great.
And a great tee-up for a call I had yesterday from somebody up in Ideal Township saying, when is the county going to quit letting people build all these great big storage buildings right down these township roads? And I said, I don't know. Because we don't, it is a road and they metal storage buildings, and I don't think we have really anything in there. If you want to build and you own the property, you can build, correct?
They're conditional use permits,
Yeah,
correct?
only conditional use. these are buildings people are building for their toys.
We've decided what districts we want them to be located in and where you
Right,
can have
right,
these
yeah.
buildings set. That's, those, we have the zoning districts for that has been set. So, we'll continue to build in those districts until it's been decided that we want to change that and, change the zoning and where we want to allow these to be built. So that'll be whatever direction that you guys want to provide, we'll make the changes to the ordinance, and wherever you want these to be located, just let us know.
The only other thing I had was you talked about marinas, and there's a fair amount of marinas on some of the lakes. Marina is considered a commercial property, correct?
Correct.
If that marina decided not to be a marina anymore and decided to build a bunch of housing in there, or a bunch of, what was it called, conservation housing in there, they would have the full right to be able to do that, correct?
They would be limited to their number of docking, would not be what a full potential marina would be. They would be limited to their tier 1 density that they would be allowed to build there, yeah.
Okay, that was just a question I had.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Anything else?
No other questions?
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
It'll be kind of mid-afternoon tomorrow, Chris.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Did you have anything? Anybody else? Paul? Is he there? If not, I think we are adjourned, correct?